All right, so we're diving deep today into the compound effect. You guys sent in some great excerpts from Darren Hardy's book, and we're going to break down how those small, everyday choices can really build up to some massive changes over time.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. This book, it tackles a problem that we all face. We get hit with so much self-improvement stuff, but most of us, we really struggle to actually put it into practice. The compound effect gives us a framework to make those changes, make them last.
For sure. It's not like some crazy crash course, right? It's about tapping into this power of consistency. I always think about that saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every single day. It's that steady progress. That's what Hardy's talking about.
Exactly. He uses this really powerful analogy. Imagine you're given a choice. $3 million today, cash, or a penny that doubles in value every single day for 31 days. What would you go for?
Okay, honestly, I'd probably grab the millions. But I'm guessing there's a catch.
Haha, you bet there is. Most people would. They'd want that instant cash. But if you're patient and you let that penny do its thing, by the end of the month, it's worth over $10 million.
No way, seriously. More than 3 times the original amount. That doesn't even make sense.
Right, and that's the crazy thing about compounding. At first, the growth seems tiny, almost like it's not even happening. But those tiny gains, they add up and they build on each other until suddenly, boom, the growth explodes.
So how does, the penny thing apply to real life?
Hardy uses this story about 3 friends, Larry, Scott, and Brad, right? They all start out pretty much the same, but Scott, he decides to make some small positive changes. Reading a little every day, watching what he eats, just walking a bit more.
Sounds pretty doable. Not exactly earth-shattering stuff.
Exactly. Just tweaks to his daily routine. But after 2.5 years, the difference is massive. Scott, he's healthier, he gets a promotion, his relationships are great.
And Brad, who didn't make those changes, he's basically stuck.
Totally. And this isn't just about personal growth. Think about money. If you consistently invest, even small amounts, those returns can build up into a huge nest egg over time. That's how retirement accounts work. It's compound interest in action.
Okay, this is making me rethink my whole YOLO philosophy.
It's not about denying yourself fun, but it's more about understanding that these small, consistent choices, they ripple outward, they compound, and it affects so many areas of our lives. It's like our society is obsessed with overnight success, but this book really challenges that.
Yeah, I think we all want that instant gratification, but what Hardy's saying is that real success, the kind that lasts, it takes time, it takes dedication, and it's built on those seemingly insignificant daily actions. It's more like how our grandparents built their lives,
Yeah.
slowly and steadily.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Hardy says that nothing fails like success. Think about it. When we reach a certain level of success, we get comfortable. And those good habits, we let them slide.
We get complacent, right? And those bad habits, they start to sneak back in. He even tells that story about the CEO who realizes he's spending hours every day just consuming news he doesn't even need.
Yeah, that's a classic example. This guy, super successful, but he's letting these unconscious habits creep in and it's actually holding him back. It's like we've got to constantly evaluate those routines and habits, make sure they're still working for us.
Okay, so we've talked about how compounding works, and we've busted that myth of overnight success. But for me, the heart of this book is about something Hardy keeps emphasizing, taking 100% responsibility for our lives.
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's so easy to blame other people or circumstances when things go wrong. But Hardy's saying, hey, own your choices, the good, the bad, all of it.
So even when things seem completely out of our control, he's saying we still have a choice in how we respond.
Yeah.
This changes how we think about luck too, doesn't it?
For sure. It's not about random chance. It's about being ready for opportunities when they show up. The more we invest in ourselves, make those consistent choices, the more likely we are to be in the right place at the right time.
So it's not just about wishing for good things to happen. It's about actively creating the conditions for success.
Exactly. And this brings us to the foundation of the compound effect, habits.
And that's where things get really interesting. We are creatures of habit, right? Hardy says something like 95% of what we do is based on habits we've learned.
And that's pretty wild when you think about it. It means we can change. We can rewire our brains, create new patterns.
But how do we break those habits that are so ingrained? Especially the bad ones. I feel like I've tried everything, and they always come back.
It's definitely tough, no doubt. Hardy has this analogy to explain why it's so hard. Imagine you're trying to walk across a plank of wood. Easy, right, if it's lying on the ground.
Yeah, piece of cake. I could do it in my sleep.
But what if that same plank is suspended between two skyscrapers? Suddenly it's terrifying.
Oh man, that's a different story. I'm getting sweaty palms just thinking about it.
It's the same task, but are you willing to do it? It all comes down to your why. Why are you doing it? What's your motivation?
So we need a strong enough reason to fuel those efforts, especially when we're trying to break bad habits and build new ones?
Exactly. Without a clear understanding of why we're doing something, it's so easy to fall back into those old comfortable patterns. We need that deep motivation, that driving force behind our goals. It gives us the strength to push through the challenges.
All right, I'm getting this.
Yeah.
So we've laid the groundwork. We understand about habits, taking responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we go from these habits to creating, like, unstoppable momentum?
That's where consistency really comes into play. It's kind of like, getting a merry-go-round spinning. It takes a lot of effort to get it moving, but once you've got momentum, it's so much easier to keep it going.
Yeah, like that snowball effect, right? The
Yeah.
more consistent we are with those small actions, the more they build on each other. It's like we create this force that just propels us forward.
Exactly. It's not just a metaphor either. This applies to, well, anything really. Fitness, learning a new skill, even building a business. Remember that story about the pump? You have to keep priming it, keep pumping before the water flows freely.
So consistency creates that vacuum for success that Hardy talks about.
You got it. It's all about finding that rhythm, that routine. It becomes second nature. And then those positive habits, they're easier to maintain once you have that momentum on your side.
Okay, this is getting me fired up. So we've got the foundation, we're building momentum. Now, how do we really kick things into high gear? How do we accelerate our results?
That's where Hardy talks about pushing past our limits, finding what he calls multiplier opportunities.
Multiplier opportunities. Okay, I like the sound of that. Give me some examples.
He talks about how during sales calls, he would push himself harder, especially when he knew that the competition was probably struggling too. It's about finding that extra gear, even when it's tough.
So it's about outworking the competition, going the extra mile when others might be giving up.
Exactly. He also mentions Arnold Schwarzenegger's cheating principle in weightlifting. It's where you intentionally push past perfect form just for a few reps to get those extra gains. You're strategically pushing boundaries to get better results.
So it's not just about working hard, but also working smart, right? Finding those creative ways to, like, maximize our effort.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's Richard Branson, always doing the unexpected, making a big splash. It's about finding ways to stand out, create that wow factor.
That reminds me of the quote, do what others won't, so you can have what others don't. Going above and beyond, exceeding expectations.
Exactly. Even a small increase in effort when you compound it over time can lead to huge jumps in your results.
This whole conversation about compounding is making me want to, like, get up and take action. As we're wrapping up, what are some key takeaways we can leave our listener with?
The most important thing is the compound effect. It's a framework for success, but it works in any area of life. It's understanding that success doesn't just happen. It's the result of these consistent, intentional choices we make every single day.
And it's not about these huge, crazy goals. It's about focusing on those small, manageable actions, those things we can do consistently. It's about building that foundation, like brick by brick, just like the Romans did.
You got it. And what's interesting is the compound effect, it's always at work. Whether we realize it or not, we get to decide if we're going to use it to our advantage.
So it's about taking ownership, choosing to be proactive instead of reactive, knowing that even the smallest actions, compounded over time, they can lead to some pretty amazing results.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And this actually brings us to a crucial part of the compound effect that Hardy really emphasizes, the power of influences.
Okay, influences. What kind of influences are we talking about here?
He identifies 3 key areas: input, associations, and environment.
Okay, let's break those down. Starting with input, what exactly does he mean by that?
Input is all about what we're feeding our minds, right? The information we take in, the stories we listen to, the media we expose ourselves to. It's like that old saying, garbage in, garbage out.
So if we're constantly bombarded with negativity, it's going to affect how we think, our beliefs, and ultimately our actions.
Exactly. Hardy's point is we got to be proactive about filtering what we're letting in, protecting ourselves from all that negativity that's just everywhere these days.
Which is tough. I mean, with social media and everything, it feels like there's always something trying to grab our attention.
It definitely takes effort. But if we want to have a more positive mindset, it's worth it. Hardy even suggests going on a media diet, limiting your exposure to news and social media.
So instead, we should be seeking out things that are positive, inspiring, uplifting, content that aligns with our goals.
Yes, be intentional about what you allow into your mental space.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked about input. What about associations? How do those play into the compound effect?
This one's all about the company we keep. Hardy, he talks about surrounding ourselves with the right people, those who support our goals, who inspire us, who challenge us to grow.
It's like that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The people we hang out with, they have a huge impact on us.
Exactly. And it's not about cutting people out of our lives completely. It's more about being mindful of the energy we're exchanging in those relationships.
Making sure that they're mutually beneficial. Right. So that they're contributing to our overall well-being.
Right. And on the flip side, Hardy also talks about what he calls expanded associations. These are relationships with mentors, role models, other successful people who can guide us.
People we might not talk to every day, but their wisdom, their insights, their experiences, they can be so valuable.
You got it. And he encourages us to seek out those relationships, whether it's through books, podcasts, or just, in-person mentorship.
So it's about expanding our circle of influence, surrounding ourselves with positive examples.
Exactly. And finally, let's talk about that third area of influence, our environment.
This one's really interesting to me because we often don't realize how much our environment shapes our thoughts and actions.
Hardy makes the point that our environment can either support our goals or sabotage them. Think about it. If you're trying to eat healthy, but your pantry is full of junk food, that's an uphill battle.
Right. It's like setting yourself up for failure. And the same applies to anything, really.
Right.
Like if your workspace is cluttered and chaotic, it's going to be harder to focus and be productive.
He actually shares a story about how his environment influenced his success. He used to go to this fancy restaurant in this really wealthy neighborhood just to be around that energy.
Wait, seriously? He would just go there to soak it all in.
He wanted to experience that atmosphere of success, to visualize himself as part of that world.
And guess what? He ended up buying his dream home in that same neighborhood. It's like proof that our environment can really shape our aspirations and influence our actions.
Exactly. The key takeaway is to be mindful of all three areas of influence: input, associations, environment. Make sure they're working together to support your goals.
It's about creating a holistic ecosystem for success, where every aspect of our lives is aligned with the outcomes we want.
Could have said it better myself. And you know what? When all three of these influences are working in harmony, that's when the compound effect becomes really powerful.
Like having a tailwind that just propels us forward.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to the final chapter of the book, acceleration.
Okay, acceleration. Now I'm intrigued. How do we actually accelerate the compound effect?
This is where Hardy challenges us to go beyond just being consistent. It's about pushing past our comfort zones and finding those opportunities to really amplify our results, taking it to the next level.
Love it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about maintaining that momentum, but actively looking for ways to speed things up.
Exactly. He talks about these moments of truth we all face. When we hit that wall, when we feel like giving up those times, when we're so tempted to just quit.
It's like those challenges really show us what we're made of, right? Do we rise to the occasion or do we crumble under pressure?
Exactly. And Hardy argues that what we do in those moments, that's what really determines our success. Do we push through the pain and resistance, or do we give in? He uses the example of Lance Armstrong, battling through that grueling mountain stage of the Tour de France.
It was his sheer determination that ultimately led him to victory, right? He just refused to give up.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that we all have that strength within us. We just have to tap into it.
So how do we access that inner strength? How do we push past those limits we set for ourselves and really accelerate our results?
Hardy offers a bunch of strategies, but one of the key things he talks about is seeking out what he calls multiplier opportunities. These are moments where just a little extra effort can lead to exponential gains.
Can you give us some specific examples of those multiplier opportunities? I'm really curious to hear how this works in practice.
Sure. He talks about pushing himself harder during sales calls, especially when he knew that his competitors were probably struggling too. It's about finding that extra gear, even when it's tough.
And so it's like outworking the competition, going that extra mile when others might be throwing in the towel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also mentions Arnold Schwarzenegger's cheating principle in weightlifting, where you intentionally push past perfect form just for a few reps to trigger extra muscle growth. It's like strategically pushing the boundaries to get those extra gains.
Wait, so is he saying it's okay to cheat?
Not Not in the traditional sense. It's more about being willing to experiment and challenge the conventional way of doing things.
Okay, that makes sense. Like thinking outside the box and not being afraid to try something new.
Right. And he also talks about Richard Branson, you know. He's always been known for his bold and unconventional approach to business. It's about finding those opportunities to stand out from the crowd and make a real impact.
This reminds me of that quote, do what others won't so you can have what others don't.
Exactly. It's about being innovative and taking calculated risks.
So acceleration, it's about pushing past our comfort zones, finding those creative solutions, and embracing that mindset of continuous improvement.
You got it. And it's about recognizing that even small increases in effort can lead to significant gains over time.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. I'm feeling so motivated to go out there and start putting these principles into practice.
Me too. And remember, you're not alone in this. We're all on this journey together.
So let's go out there and start compounding our success one small step at a time.
And never underestimate the power of those small choices, because when compounded over time, they can lead to some truly amazing results.
This deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much about the compound effect and how we can use it to create positive change in our lives.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you. And remember, the journey of self-improvement is ongoing. So keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to be the best version of yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the compound effect. We hope you found it valuable and inspiring.
And remember, you have the power to create the life you want. It all starts with those small, consistent choices compounded over time.
Until next time, keep diving deep